I guess I didn't know that's what you went by, Angela. And their 3 children, of course, that we mentioned throughout the day. I want to read this to make sure I get all their names right. Hannah, Maddie, and Neelan. I don't have to read it. There we go. We're happy to have them down. I think the very fact that this family is here with us today, one, shows their interest in serving the Lord and working with youth. And guys, that should be commended. And 2, it shows the interest of our elders to take a vested interest in our youth, because we do have kids here and they do need a special attention as far as the education that we as a church offer. And I appreciate an eldership who will listen when I say, hey, what do you guys think about having a youth minister? No, not a guy right out of preaching school, but a guy that has a family and has been a youth minister before, who might stick around for a handful of years and work with the congregation. And so I was happy that they listened, or that they were open to that suggestion, and they took the lead on it from there. And so we have Ryan and his family joining us this evening as well as this morning. Wonderful Bible class if you weren't here to listen. Ryan received his bachelor's degree from Ambridge University and received his master's degree in, I believe, ministry from Freed-Hardeman University. He has worked as a youth minister in Dexter, Missouri. He has also worked with the church in Scott Hill. There's in and around Freed-Hardeman area in Tennessee. And we're happy to have him and his family with us this evening. Now, he's going to come and preach to us. I think we know that the primary role that a youth minister will serve will be much behind the scenes, working with the kids. But Ryan, we're going to invite you to come right now and talk to us. And we appreciate you doing this work and being here with us today.
All here this evening. Glad everybody was able to come out and brave the weather, make it outside here tonight. I'm glad to be here with all of you, and I just want to say from my family to yours, a big thank you. We've been made to feel very welcome here over this weekend. We've had a very enjoyable time, and it's been nice to meet y'all and get to know you a little bit better. We've had a very good time here. Well, tonight, as you could probably guess, I would like to talk about our youth. And there's a lot of different things that we could talk about, and there's a lot of different things that might come to your mind when you think about our young people. But I want to take a little bit different idea, because I want to talk about some principles that can be laid out to show what a healthy youth program looks like. And so if you have your Bibles with me, and I hope you do, please turn over to Luke Chapter 2, and we're going to do a little bit of reading from Luke Chapter 2 this evening, and we'll go some other places, but that's where we're going to start out. Now, like I said, this might be a little different than place than you expect to go, but I don't think it's a little bit different place than you might expect us to begin tonight. So Luke Chapter 2, and all the way down, we're going to start in verse 41 of Luke Chapter 2. Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 41, says, "Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, searching for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, 'Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress.' And he said to them, 'Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?' And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man." So Jesus is a boy of 12 years old, and as is Jewish custom, he's going to be, they're going to go to the Passover at the temple down in Jerusalem, but when you're about 12 years old, basically there's a little bit of a ceremony where you go and you declare yourself a son of the covenant. You say that you are responsible for obeying the Old Testament law. And so Jesus is going, and this is kind of a special one, and they also ask, what occupation are you going to have? Well, typically if you ask a 12-year-old boy, what is it that they want to do? Well, I want to be like my daddy, right? That's kind of a typical answer right there. So Jesus says, comes down to this ceremony. They're going to go back to Nazareth in a large group because there is safety in numbers, and the world is not a safe place, especially at this time. And so a large group is probably going to be traveling together as a caravan, and this might be a little bit different than what we think, but basically the kids are going to go back and they're going to just run around alongside the caravan, and they're kind of expected to just be there. It doesn't come till, it seems, it doesn't come until the end of the first day, come nightfall, when they're all settling down to find a place to sleep. They're like, yeah, Jesus is here somewhere, right? No, he's not here somewhere. Okay, well, now we need to go back and find him. So they end up going back to Jerusalem, finding him, and when they finally find him, he is in the temple, and the text says he is sitting among the teachers, listening to them, asking them questions, and all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. So did Jesus understand his purpose here on earth? Yes. Yes, I think we can see that. Does Jesus understand his purpose on earth more than his parents do? Yes, again, Jesus understands why he is supposed to be here. I'm not sure that I have ever met a adolescent who didn't think that they were smarter than their parents in at least one way or another, right? But with Jesus, I think we might actually grant him that even at the age of 12, he did know more than his parents about what was going on here. So if there's anybody who could say, I know more than you to their parents, it would actually be Jesus. But that is not what the text says that Jesus does. The text says that Jesus goes back home with his parents and was submissive to them. I'm reading from, I believe I've got the ESV here. I think I adjusted some things here earlier. But it says he is submissive to his parents. Why? Why is Jesus submissive to his parents? Couldn't he have just started right then and there? He's already in the temple. People are already amazed at him, right? And he's over there, and apparently he is asking such good questions and giving such good answers that, well, let's just go ahead and start right now, Jesus. How much can you get done in extra 2 decades, right? But he goes home and he's submissive to his parents because God's plan is for parents to raise their children. And the best youth minister on the planet doesn't outweigh the influence that the family has. Now does that mean that the entire concept of youth ministry is bad or wrong? No, certainly not. But a sustainable youth ministry is one that is going to take a family-based approach. There is a guy who has written a book, Mark DeVries, he has written a book, Sustainable Youth Ministry, and another one that is Family-Based Youth Ministry. Family-Based Youth Ministry. Let me say that correctly there. He says that trying to work with young people without trying to involve the parents is a lot like trying to drive a car that doesn't have an engine in it. Now, it might look good. It might be, like, okay, well, there's a lot of parts you need, right? I've heard the old saying, which part's the most important part of the car? Well, whichever one's not working. You go out here and your windshield wipers don't work, you're going to think your windshield wipers are the most important thing today, right? But you're not going to get anywhere, at least nowhere fast, if you don't have an engine in your car, right? Sustainable success is only possible when everyone is involved. And what is success? If we were to define what success is, what would that look like? Well, it's right here in the text. It says in Luke 2:52 that Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. He grew mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And my responsibility as a parent is to ensure that my children grow physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. But that only comes with some intentional effort. A few years ago, I guess this was 2009. 2009. I was in infantry training for the United States Marine Corps. Well, as they kind of teach you to walk and then start to run, right, And so we start getting a little bit of training on what you would do if you were to come into a building and there's bad guys in it, right? Well, the first time that we're supposed to go in there in a fire team, which is a group of 4 Marines, I ended up, just by bad luck of the draw, being in the very last fire team on that entire day out of our entire company to go through. So what happened before we went through, and we knew this was going to happen because rumors spread, and we had already heard this is what was going to happen to whoever was absolute last. The instructors took all the ammo, and they went in there and they said, we're just gonna shoot at you just because it's fun. Now the ammo is little paintball pellets, right? Yeah, specially modified weapons, and so they have hundreds of these paintball pellets that they are expecting to shoot at us and just ruin our day. The training value on this is very minimal, we will say at this point, right? Well, me trying to think about some out-of-the-box ideas, noticed a box of dummy grenades. Now these are fake grenades, but they weigh the same as the real thing, and they go boom and make a loud noise, but they don't actually blow up and hurt anybody. The plan is each group of 4 Marines is going to have 1 grenade. They're going to throw it in the first room, and then they're going to start clearing it. And I said, there's a whole box of grenades over there. How about we see how many grenades we could have? And so they gave us 3 rounds apiece because they said, don't let it be said we didn't give you any ammo, right? Okay, well, they gave us 3 rounds apiece. We go in there. All of our instructors are ready to cause some pain. They told us ahead of time that they were aiming for our hands because there's no protective gear on your hands, and it'll leave a mark, and so we'll know we hit you. Okay, thank you. Great encouragement here. And so we started just stuffing our pockets with all of these dummy grenades that are just going to go boom, right? Well, the first time we received any contact, my training kicked in, and I fired what was known as a failure to stop drill. Without getting technical, it requires me to fire 3 rounds. Now, I'm not a mathematician. In fact, at Freed-Hardeman, I took a class that I believe was formerly called Math for Bible Majors. But I know that 3 minus 3 is 0, right? So I just slung my weapon across my back and just started running in. We were just yelling and screaming and throwing these grenades, and it was just pandemonium. It started going off. We thought it was hilarious. Our instructors were way less amused. They did not find any of it funny at all. And we got through the end of that, and they were like, what was the point of all that? I was like, well, y'all took all the ammo, right? It's like, but what did we learn? Well, it was fun, right? I got to yell and scream and make a whole lot of noise. I like to yell, scream, and make a lot of noise, so that sounds good to me. And they're like, okay, well, what did you learn? What actual training value did that have? How did you improve, and how were you better today? I wasn't, unless I ever encountered that oddly specific circumstance, which I don't think has ever been encountered before. I didn't get any better. And so if we are not intentional about what we're doing, and we're not smart about what we're doing, then it's not going to do us any good. Now, we can make a lot of noise, we can maybe have some fun even, right? But it's not going to get us any closer to our goal of becoming better as Christians. Turn over to Deuteronomy chapter 6, if you would. Deuteronomy chapter 6, we'll read a few verses out of here. So that's the individual goal, as we might have it. Deuteronomy chapter 6, now starting in verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. Another verse that's very important when we think about the role of parents. Who is going to be the one who teaches their children about the commandments of God? Well, the Old Testament, the expectation, and this is what Jesus would have lived under, right, is that the parents would be teaching them the commandments of God. That's the expectation. A strong, robust, active youth ministry program is absolutely outstanding, and when it is done properly, it supports the parents, it involves them, and makes sure that they are very welcome in it. And if you think about it, the Israelites at the time this is written, they still had Moses, right? Moses was chosen by God to go up on Mount Sinai and receive the Ten Commandments directly from God. But when it comes to time to teach your children these things, they say, send them off to Moses. And I said, you need to teach your children these things. Now, of course, they had leaders. They had people over different size groups, but the focus was that parents would teach their children. So an active youth ministry program is a strong predictor of long-term spirituality. That's true. But my point is simply that in no way, shape, or form should anything we do here negate anything that is happening at home or take over for what should be going on in the home. Parents are the ones that are with kids when they rise up and when they lay down and when they go by the way. They have that role. One individual that I had a privilege not only to sit under at Freed-Hardeman and be in his Bible classes, but also to work alongside of at the Scotts Hill Church Christ in Tennessee, said that his goal in ministry was always to be a resource. He wanted to be the best resource for you that he possibly could be, you know? And it's that idea. If you're struggling, I want to be able to help you. If you're going through times of transition, I want to support you. And as we raise our children, I want to help you be able to raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. A healthy youth program from this passage looks like parents who are empowered to teach their children about Scripture by their words and by their lives and their examples. It looks like a Bible class program that teaches the Word of God with age-appropriate applications to what the Bible says, and healthy relationships so that we are able to talk comfortably about these matters. But not every individual is fortunate enough to grow up in a home like that, to be able to grow up in a home with parents who love them and will take the time to teach the Word of God to them. So we don't want to make it seem like they are not welcome or they are not able to be part of the program. Because as I talked about this morning, when we think about a family, we should be thinking about the church. The congregation that makes it Lake City is to be a family. And it doesn't just apply, those attributes we talked about this morning don't just apply to the so-called nuclear family, right? They also apply to the church. And think about it like this. The church at Lake City is willing to make sacrifices for each other. The church at Lake City expresses appreciation for one another. The church at Lake City is willing to develop a trusting relationship with each other. The church at Lake City has an unconditional love for one another. The church at Lake City is understanding with each other. The church at Lake City is able to adapt to life storms, and the church of Lake City knows and serves God. Now, if we were able to say that list about ourselves, I think we'd say that we're doing all right. Nobody gets left out because we're a family. And if we look back at the early church in Acts chapter 2, turn over there with me real quick. At the early church in Acts chapter 2, we're going to see the exact same attitude as those things that I've just listed and I've been talking about. As the church really should be a family. Acts chapter 2, starting in verse 42. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and the breaking of bread and prayers, and all came upon every soul. And many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. Verse 44 says, and all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who are being saved. I don't know about you, but when I read those verses, it sounds a lot like a family, right? Now, there are obviously spiritual things, and that was their reason for originally meeting together. But that wasn't all they did. They ate together. They spent time together. They made sure to be a presence in each other's lives as they were starting down this journey where the gospel is now just starting. So, how do we effectively raise our youth? Well, it starts in the home, but we also bring it together. So that way, as a congregation, we work together to bring our youth up and train them to be the kind of person that God has a plan for, or be the person that God has planned for them to be. And I don't want you to think that I've got this kind of new radical idea about this. Turn over, and this will be our last large block of text, I'll say, is Nehemiah Chapter 4. We can go back a few thousand years and see this happen. Nehemiah Chapter 4, and we're just going to start in verse 1. It says, "Now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And he said in the presence of his brothers and the army of Samaria, 'What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish and the burned ones at that?' Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, 'Yes, what are they building? If a fox goes up upon it, he will break down their stone wall. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads, and give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not the sin be blotted out from your eyes, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders.' So we built the wall. And all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work." A little bit of background context on this passage right here. The opponents of Israel do not want to see the Israelites come out of Babylon captivity and become strong again, because they've had things pretty nice without the Israelites around. They become accustomed to being the power in the land, and they don't want to see anybody come up who might threaten that power. So they're looking at them, and they just look over at them and scoff, right? Jerusalem is so torn down. You think about, they say, if a fox runs on the wall that they're trying to build, it'll tear it down, right? You think about how light-footed a fox is, how quickly they move and how light they are. That's what they're saying. But there's no way, there's so much trash in Jerusalem that if we wanted to, we could sneak into the city and we could attack them and they wouldn't even know it, right? But what does verse 6 says? It says, "So we built the wall, and the wall was joined together half its height, for the people had a mind to work." We live in a world where there are people who certainly do not want us to succeed. And especially when it comes to our kids, there are people who do not want us to succeed in raising them up to become faithful children of God. We need to be able to defend our homes from a spiritual attack. And the reason that they were successful is the same reason we will be successful if we are successful, because they had a mind to work, that they were ready and willing to work. Skip on down to verse 13. It says, "So in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall and open places I stationed the people by their clans with their swords, their spears, and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and to the officials and the rest of the people, 'Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes.'" So how were they arranged? Well, they arranged them by families, right? They didn't just throw them all together and pick them out by height or something like that. They arranged them by their families. Because if you are supposed to be working and building a wall and defending the people who are on the other side of that wall, and the people who are on the other side of that wall are your family, you're going to work pretty hard. You're willing to put in the work to make sure that those people are safe. It's a bunch of people coming together and working for a mutually beneficial goal. Because if the wall isn't built, if we are not defended, if we are not protected, and if we are not doing the work, then it's not just somebody who gets hurt. It's not abstract at that point. I know who gets hurt. It's my son. It's my daughter. It's my family. But also, you think about kind of just in terms of a reality, right? Some families are bigger than others, aren't they? Some families have a lot of family in one area. Some families have, 2 or 3 people here and 6 or 7 over here and 4 or 5 over here, right? So how is this supposed to work? Well, they address that fact. Nehemiah Chapter 4, verse 15 says, "When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, we all returned to the wall, each to his work. From that day on, half of my servants worked on construction and half held the spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. And the leaders stood behind the whole house of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and his weapon in the other. And each of the builders had his sword strapped by his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me, and I said to the nobles and the officials and all the rest of the people, the work is great and widely spread, and we are separated on the wall far from one another. In the place where you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. When one family comes under attack, then we should see it as an attack on all of us. So when our kids are at risk, we see that as we are all at risk. When our kids are dealing with difficult times, we are all dealing with difficult times, because it's not in the abstract, it's real. And the verse here says in verse 20 that when the trumpet sounds, go there and fight for who is there, right? You take who you've got, which would be your family, and you go to them, which would be another family, and you fight for them and make sure that they succeed. A sustainable youth program is built around families, and realizing that when families are strong, not just strong and clannish and separated, but not in terms of they're hard to get along with, strong-willed, but when they're strong and they work together, then the entire congregation succeeds. If one of us hurts, we all hurt, and if one of us succeeds, then we all succeed. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7 and 8 say, but we were gentle among you like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. Paul right here is talking to the church at Thessalonica and talking about his time spent there. And he says, we didn't just go there and preach. We went there and we shared every aspect of our lives with you, because that's what the gospel does. It makes us a family, people of different ages and different backgrounds, all coming together for a common purpose. When I was 17, I was about to go into the Marine Corps. There was a gentleman at the Maysville Church of Christ. His name was Bobby Burke. And our fellowship, or not our fellowship, our foyer in the back is a little bit different. The auditorium looks about like this, but the foyer goes out to the sides, and there's doors on either sides with a carport. And I'd known, Mr. Burke, Mr. Bobby, but I started going over to his house, I guess when I was about 16 or so, and being able to spend some time with him and get to hear about his life experiences and find out a little bit more about him. He used to come to services, and he'd have to sit down in between the double glass doors where we had a little plant there, because it was so hard for him to make it in. He couldn't make it in just one go, right? So we'd have to stop there. And he'd stop again at the foyer. And if he could do it, he'd make it to the back row. And then if he could do it a little more, he'd make it to, his spot, right? Everybody's got their spot. But there were a lot of days he couldn't make it all the way there. And on one Sunday morning, somebody came and got me and they said, hey, Bobby Burke's here and he's looking for you. I said, okay. I went back there. I didn't know he was back there. So I left my friends, went over there, talked to Bobby Burke, and he stood up, talked to me. He reached in his pocket and he pulled out a little vial, handed it to me. I was looking at it, it kind of looks like dirt, but it doesn't have the right consistency. And I said, what was this? He said, this is black sand that came out of my pockets when I got off Iwo Jima. And I know you're going to the Marine Corps, and they're mighty proud of what they did on Iwo Jima. And I wanted you to see this. There's no reason for a man well into his 80s to make that effort for a 17-year-old kid. I don't really remember too many times. I know we probably did a couple times, but that we even talked about the Bible specifically. But he was willing to share his life with me. And I got to be honest with you, when I was in the Marine Corps, and I was the only person who needed to get up and who was willing to get up and go to worship services on a Sunday morning, You know, I love my youth minister. I love Lonnie Jones. But I would think about Bobby Burke and how much effort it took him to get to worship services. And I said, if it's that important to him, I want to be like him. And I'm going to make it there too. That's what all of us coming together looks like. Because there's no way that it would make any sense for me and him to have a relationship other than the fact that he took the time to pay attention to me and he took the time to take care of me. No one ever sounded a trumpet over my head to tell him that somebody needed to come over and talk to me, right? But I had people who took the time to care about me and share with me not only the gospel, but their entire lives. Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with man. And I can't think of any greater goal that we can have for our young people. These words I command to you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. Shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise. The first line of defense and God's plan for our children starts in the home. And then I said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, the work is great and we are widely spread. We are separated on the wall, far from one another. In the place where you hear the sound of the trumpets, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. We will rally to each other in times of trouble. So what do these things tell us? That we are a family. That's the goal. We should be a family. What does a sustainable approach look like? It looks like trying to make our kids look more like Jesus every single day. And we are willing to make sacrifice for each other. We're willing to do the work. We're willing to sound the trumpet when it's needed. And work with our kids to grow them up into a mature Christian adult. Now, there's a ton of other things that I could go on to say, and if I had all night, I could go on for quite a while. But it's important for us to be a family, and these kids are important. I haven't had a specifically evangelistic sermon tonight, but before we leave, I want to offer an opportunity. If there's anybody who is in a situation where you need the prayers of the church, if you're in a situation where you need to come back, where you know that God has a plan for you and you need to come back to that plan, or maybe it is that even tonight that there's somebody here who has not obeyed the gospel call, they have not believed in the Word of God, they haven't repented of their sins, confessed Jesus Christ as Lord, and been baptized to rise up and walk that new life. If there's any way we can assist you tonight, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.